quick access to loans from Page Financials. Page Financials, taking you further.
It's Smooth 98.1 Love Music, Love Life. Thanks very much for tuning in and joining us for today's edition of Freshly Pressed 981. I am Ayo Myro SA.
Good morning, I'm Valentine Oku. Welcome.
On today's show, we have Mr. C. Good morning, Mr. C.
Good morning, Naya. Good morning, Valentine. Good morning, Lagos.
Excellent. We also have Wade Ahime. Morning, Wade. How are you today?
Morning, Ayo. Good morning, Valentine. Good morning, Lagos. Good morning, Mr. C.
If you'd like to join the conversation, we're streaming live on YouTube, so go on to YouTube channel, Smooth 981 FM Lagos. You can also use the chat box to send us your thoughts on today's stories.
Yep. You can comment on YouTube as well. Thank you so much, Aya, for providing those. Let's start with our first story from Premium Times. WhatsApp, by the way, WhatsApp number is 0809-444-0981. That's 0809-444-0981. Mrs. C, Premium Times has its report on the PIB, Petroleum Industry Bill, that's been signed today. Most papers describe it as an epoch-making event, a history, history being made. I recall that a few areas of contention, especially the percentage that would go to host communities in the Niger Delta. They were clamoring, especially the southern governors were clamoring for 10%. It was pegged at 3% now, which has become effective based on this ratification by the presidency. The Petroleum Industry Act provides legal governance, regulatory and fiscal framework for the petroleum industry, development of host communities, and related matters. Please, what are your thoughts on Americans' expectations that Nigerians should have?
Thank you, Valentine. So the president signed into law Petroleum Industry Bill, and it's now to be known as the Petroleum Industry Act. Now, this act has been a long time in the making. Let's go back as far as President Obasanjo's administration. There have been moves to have this law passed, but for circumstances and reasons beyond everyone's control, it never happened. Now, the consequences of it not happening before now was that investments in the oil and gas industry stalled. The international oil companies were reluctant to make new investments because they were uncertain as to the regulatory and operational framework for the oil and gas industry. Now it has been signed. And what are the highlights of this act? So the highlights as follows. The NNPC will be unbundled, and by February 2022 must become a limited liability company incorporated under the Company and Allied Matters Act. This is very important because going forward, the shareholders will decide the constitution of the board. It will no longer be up to the president.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Also, as you rightly pointed out, the act retains 3% allocation of all revenue for host communities and 30% for frontier basins. Yes, we know that the southern states were upset, weren't happy with it, but they should remember something. They already have a 13% derivative fund coming in.
Yes.
So there must be some wisdom to this. We can't always get what we want the way we want it. And then you also have the Niger Delta NDDC, which also handles projects. So the revenue has to go around. Now, moving on, 2 new regulatory agencies are created, and this is very important. For the upstream sector, we now have a new agency, and it's called the Nigerian Upstream Petroleum Regulatory Commission, and it is responsible for the technical and commercial regulation of the upstream petroleum operations. Previously, what had obtained was that the upstream, midstream, and downstream sectors of oil and gas industry were all regulated by DPR.
Yes.
Now they have broken it down. The upstream sector is managed by the Nigerian Upstream Petroleum Regulatory Commission, and then the midstream and downstream sectors are now managed by a new body known as the Nigerian Midstream and Downstream Petroleum Regulatory Authority.
Do these two bodies or regulatory authorities come on under DPR?
No,
Or do they
DPR.
stand alone?
So with the creation of these agencies, DPR will cease to exist. That is the implication.
So what happens to the staff and those,
So the
under
staff
employed?
will be moved to the respective agencies as their qualifications or competencies are required.
Okay, excellent.
Now, also, there's a provision for host communities funds to be set up within 12 months of the signing into law. Now, this is important because apart from exploring for oil and carrying out the processing, the production of crude oil and refining of crude oil, a fund has to be set aside for the development of these communities because the very act of extracting the oil damages the land of the communities.
Exactly.
And they are dependent on their land for fishing, for farming. So it only makes sense that they get it back. Finally, this, I'm rounding up now. NNPC is going to retain 10% of the profit on oil and gas as management fees. Now, with the signing into law of this act, there is a fear, it's not a fear. The under recovery or the subsidy on petroleum, as the NNPC likes to refer to it, is going. And Nigerians should brace for a major policy change. And the Minister of State for Petroleum Resources is addressing the nation today. And there are suspicions that if the subsidy is removed or the current under recovery is removed, we might be buying petrol for about 300 naira a liter.
Do you think that announcement will be part of his speech today, or will that be later on? Because a number of people are wondering what would be contained in his speech.
Okay, so what will be contained in his speech will be the highlights of this act, as I've tried to spell out, and also explain to everyone the act cancels subsidy or under recovery program. So he has to speak. He has to speak to it. Even if he can't give us a price, he announces officially that it's going, and that a price will be communicated shortly.
Wonderful.
Yes.
The next few days will be interesting.
I won't be surprised if it's announced today, though. The new price ban.
No. So even though the new price ban is coming, they still have to hold talks with Labour because
marketers.
Yeah, no. The marketers are prepared to implement it, of course. But Labour, they don't want another strike. They're still dealing with the resident doctors.
Yes. Thank you so much for that. Constitution review. Lawmakers move. Okay, you know what? Let me just allow that rest or simmer for a bit. Let's go to this next story. The federal government is set to borrow yet another sum, 5.62 trillion naira, to finance deficits in the 2022 budget, according to the finance minister. The finance minister says, as with most other things, we're going to keep borrowing. As well, in this, the economic situation is real. But for how long?
That question I really can't answer, but it's going to be for a while. Why? Because we're not generating the kind of revenues that we expect to generate. In totality, looking at the proposed budget, revenue that would accrue to government is just about 8.3 trillion, while expenditure is going to be about 13.9 trillion. There's a slight increase in revenue of about 5%, but a slightly higher increase in expenditure of 6%. The good thing is that the non-oil revenue is growing. VAT is going to contribute much more towards the bottom line in comparison to oil. We're beginning to diversify more and more the economy from oil, which is a mainstay. But my big worry is that over the last 3 to 4 years, we have had deficit. We've had to finance about 40% of the budget through deficit, meaning that Nigeria is hugely indebted. They're going to take more loans again in 2022, whether it's local or foreign. Who are the people that are going to pay these loans because they're
in 2022 ahead of 2022?
For in line with they're implementing the 2021 borrowings. They're going to borrow about 5 point something trillion to finance the deficit of 2022. Whether it's local or foreign, we're just going to continue borrowing. By the end of 2022, I won't be surprised if our total borrowings across Nigeria is over $100 billion,
But it's interesting to note that the infrastructural projects being funded by these loans that are being taken, with the hopes of plugging these holes, like you mentioned, that has been sunk based on this borrowing.
Well, so the good thing from what I see with the proposals this time around is that they are going to start recuperating from some of the infrastructure that they've put in place.
Okay.
They're going to start getting some monies from them.
Yeah.
But the thing also is that they reduced the amount of capital expenditure for 2022, which for me is saying that the government is beginning to wind down towards its end, but you're just going to continue borrowing. A lot of the projects that are being done probably will not be completed before the end of the term of this government, which brings to question in 2023 when the new government comes in, what happens to all these projects?
So government is a continuum. So.
It should be, but we've noticed over time that each government that comes in, the first
let's
thing
look
they do
forward.
is
Cautiously optimistic.
we can't go forward without checking where the history is. So my hope is in 2023, when you have a new government, they will continue with the implementation of capital expenditure, which has been great, which would create employment, which will create the enabling environment over time to be able to generate new revenues.
So just to quickly chip in, right? I agree with everything what he has said, and the key question here remains: what is the proportion of debt repayment we have for every naira we earn? Currently, it's about 80 kobo. For every 1 naira we earn currently, we're spending about 80 kobo on debt repayment. And what are we using these things? It's easy to say we're funding infrastructure, but they're proposing to slash capital expenditure, like Wade pointed out. Are we borrowing to fund recurrent expenditures?
Well,
So I would answer in one way, and it's two prongs. It's not a unique situation to Nigeria. It's not like significantly unique. A lot of countries are borrowing, especially the ones that have been described as developing and self-sustaining. A lot of them are borrowing because of COVID and economic situation as real. And also the fact that if you're making enough money to pay off 80% of the loans that you take, you're doing quite well in the scheme of things.
Valentine, I will beg to disagree. If you're spending 80 kobo out of every naira you earn just to repay previous debt, what is left to then fund recurrent expenditure, then capital?
What if we're not making any money at all?
good question.
Really?
I think I'll take comments now, but one of the things that people have called for is that we should be, which we don't seem to be seeing, is cutting the costs in terms of revenue, especially for the government, which we're not seeing. So it's not justifying the amount of money being borrowed, and as well as the fact that we're perhaps not seeing commensurate capital projects to the level of borrowing that we have. And then Olasoji says on WhatsApp, possible increase in fuel prices, another borrowing in the horizon. We can't justify these things. Nigeria shouldn't be considering these type of moves.
Real one says, if our leaders can do the right thing by not dipping their hands into the cookie jar, things would work accordingly. I hope all these borrow can be used judiciously.
That's another one. If you have 80 kobo to pay off debt, why did you borrow? And why are you still in debt?
They said it's for a time, and that time too shall pass, right? Mr. C, this next story, Premium Times has a headline: Constitution Review, lawmakers move to replace the Federal Capital Territory minister with a mayor. There are criticisms surrounding this story. Interestingly enough, there's a comparison between the FCT and the Washington in State of Affairs, but there's a justification for it. Now, the bill was sponsored by Deshaun Bagos, who is representing Plateau State PDP, seeks to remove the president as the chief executive officer of the FCT and replace him with an elected mayor who will administer the FCT as the chief executive. What are your thoughts on what this the bill proposes, and what it seeks to achieve?
Okay, so thank you, Valentine. So there is a bill to suggest requesting the replacement of the FCT minister with an elected mayor. Now, the background to this proposal is that previously what has obtained under the Constitution is that even though Section 299 of the Constitution as amended, the 1999 Constitution as amended, states that the Federal Capital Territory will be treated like every other state in the country. However, Section 301 and 302 allow the president to appoint the FCT executive. And the proposal now is, if you say that the FCT is just like any other state, then they should be elected. And part of the reasons given is that previous FCT administrators have not been really accountable to the people living in the FCT, but have only used that position as a launchpad to pursue political ambitions in their home state. And they feel that if the position is an elected position, then whoever occupies that office will be more accountable and be held responsible by the people there. Now, that is one side of the argument. The hurdles they need to clear, they need to have sections 301 and 302 amended. And to amend provisions of the Constitution, you need two-thirds of the majority of the state houses of assembly. Then you need two-thirds in the House of Representatives, two-thirds in the Senate.
You know, they tried to pass this in the last assembly.
Yeah,
The sections that you
Yeah,
mentioned.
there have been several attempts to do this, and because of the enormous hurdles placed in front of them, I wish them luck. Because
Hurdles like what, really?
to get two-thirds now in a country that is so divided, and do not forget that already divisions have been heightened in the last, say, 5-6 years, and it could be wrongly interpreted that this is a move to create a 20th northern state. That yes, you're calling him a mayor, but he will act like a governor.
Yeah.
And there's no,
It's going to increase.
and then so when you have an elected mayor, you amend the provisions to say that he's like a governor.
Yeah.
Do they not get the same allocation like
As
other
the governors
states, reducing allocations, existing allocations, which are very low to existing states?
But you know, the benefits will still come with responsibilities. The same expectations that had on governors or states will still be, directed
So
at them as
it's a good move. I'm not sure of the timing.
well. Okay.
All right. Let's go on a break. When we come back, we'll go to some of the stories that we have on today's edition of Freshly Pressed 91.
98.1.
So we're going to Wade.
Yeah.
Well, let me do the airport concession before the police rescue, except airport
That's it.
concession.
That's-
You want to break? Yeah. Thank you.
Airport concession.
Let's go for concession first.
So I do airport concession for about.
Welcome back. You're listening to Freshly Pressed 981 on Smooth Breakfast with I am Myra Esse.
And Valentine Ohu, we still have some stories to go.
Yes, our guest analyst Wade Ahime and Mr. C, the Mr. C.
If you'd like to send your message, you can do so using our WhatsApp platform 0809 444 0981. Wade, federal government opens bid for airport concession, pegs worth of bidders at 30 billion naira. Federal government yesterday opened bids for the concession of 4 international airport terminals in Lagos, Abuja, Port Harcourt, and Kano. The request for qualification as part of efforts to run the facilities efficiently and profitably is open to firms or consortia with track record in airport terminal management and net worth of 30 billion naira per bidding firm or consortium. It's important to note that the earlier proposal had been for a concession tenure of 20 to 30 years for facilities.
Good news to my ears. Extremely good news to my ears, and I hope that this process would be quickly completed so that they can hand over a lot of the not just the infrastructure but also the operations and maintenance of the critical airports in Nigeria over to people who are going to put money into it and invest in them. When you look at the airports and you compare them to the seaports, you would see the huge and remarkable difference that has come in following the concessions that were given to the seaports. Huge investments came in. Operations had become better, faster, irrespective of the fact that you still had the gridlock in Apapa, which was mainly due to the roads. But you'll be able to streamline how airports work properly. You should be able, with this whoever gets the concession will be able to rearrange how the airports operate. Security should be improved. You should have less people just hanging around the airports in terms of touts and things like that. Although there's been a remarkable improvement in the airports in Nigeria, but and it will also bring revenue to the government. This is good news to my ears, and I hope that this process is done and completed on time.
Before we conclude, it's good news. Can we evaluate the current, at least analyze current state of concessions, at least with airports used by Courtney and the MM2 as an example? How has that partnership worked?
Well, I don't think, when you look at the local airports and when you look at the what's it called, the level of traffic, I don't think it's been really beneficial to the private people who invested in it. But all over the world, because it's an international airport, and when you go across the world, you find out that more and more governments are actually conceding airports to the management of private individuals. We know one, what's it called, Gatwick was ceded to a Nigerian owned, what's it called, and the operations, and people who fly to Gatwick have told me, and I've heard, not just saying, that the operations have become better, faster. If you go to the US, since it was handed over to the TSA, there were huge improvements in terms of how airport security was, the flow of traffic, and so on. So now, what you see in ports, you would, because you now have to run two things. You want to make it very efficient so that you can reduce, you can improve turnaround time, and also increase the revenue generation capabilities of the airport, which for me is good for both parties. One, to the concessionaire and to the federal government, because they'll be able to generate more revenues from the airports and so on.
All right. I'm really glad you mentioned this. The reason I'm saying that is because you said in other parts of the world, there's the Nigerian factor. And that's why I wanted you to use a local example, even though it is, local airports.
A good example would be the seaports. If you go to the seaports, things have become better.
Okay.
And you will find out that there are huge investments that have been placed. And also, they're doing a rebid for the concessions of the seaport, and that will also generate additional revenues for the government. So
right.
Naturally, if you put your money in something, you manage it better.
You will. Just if the person that you bought it from is still backing down.
How much influence?
Yes. All right, let's move on to our next story, shall we, Mr. C? 36 state attorney generals sue AGF over recovered funds remittance. Please take us through this. According to this, the attorney generals of the 36 attorneys general, I beg your pardon, of the 36 states of the country have instituted an action against the office of the Attorney General of the Federation over the government's failure to remit funds into the federal account.
Okay, thank you, Ayo. Now, as we all recall, since the advent of this present administration, we've been regaled with constant tales of sums of money recovered from looters, properties, vehicles, and the like. And the immediate past chairman of the EFCC always seized the opportunity to tell us what work the EFCC was doing with regards to recovering these sums of money. Now, at various times, the question had been asked, where are these monies and what are they being used for? On some occasions, we had government functionaries and officials stating that the monies had been deployed to fund budgets and to do all sorts of fund other activities. Now we have the 36 state attorney generals suing the federal government and the AGF to account for the money. Now, so it's a very interesting suit. I like the suit because now the AGF must come to court and reduce into writing where the money is, because the AGFs have said the money should have been paid into the Federation account. Apparently, as at the time of filing this suit, it was not done. So if the monies were not paid into the Federation account, where were they paid into?
Probably still the ministries.
No, the ministries, there's a TSA.
But they go which account?
So
The
you can
regulation requires that all monies go to TSA.
This came up last month, and it came up 2 months before that. So I like an ongoing conversation, and people are still asking these questions.
But now it's in court.
Yeah.
So now they can no longer hide. They have to file papers in court.
Absolutely. Now, just explain to us for a few seconds, why is it such an interest to the states? How does it impact them when they're not remitting?
Good. So when funds are not being remitted, monies due to them every month from the federal allocation dwindle.
Yes.
And they're saying that, look, we can't be having dwindling allocations when we have these huge sums of money, we don't know where they are.
And we contribute to it.
Yes, and then furthermore, these sums of money, believe it or not, are earning interest. Who is getting that interest?
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Accountability. Now, interesting story here, but interesting. Yeah. So the bot is a positive one. The police public relations officer of the state command, that's talking about Zamfara State, has announced that students of the State College of Agriculture and Animal Science have been rescued by the police. He confirmed the rescue of the members of staff of the school to newsmen in Gusau. The statement further said that the Commissioner of Police, Zamfara State, Ayuba N. Elkana, accompanied by strategic and tactical commanders, visited the school at Bakrak Monday morning following the attack by suspected bandits of the school. These kind of stories just cheer me up, make me, because not every day we hear of kidnappings and abductions and everything. It's good to hear about rescue. What are your thoughts on this one?
Well done the police for their quick response. It could have been worse, despite the fact that 15 students and 4 members of staff were still abducted. They've been able to rescue 3, but it could have been worse. And what you've seen over time now is kidnappers are looking for schools and institutions where they can take as many people as possible. By being able to repel this, it's good news. Unfortunately, 2 of the civilian guards lost their lives. My condolences to the family. My heartfelt condolences, and also the inspector of police who lost his life. But if the response can be this quick and swift and be able to counter this kind of things, then we know that the kidnappers themselves will start to think twice before they plan this kind of assaults on where they can gather as many people as possible. Initially, we know that kidnapping started on the road. Now they are targeting schools because the population there is quite large. But kudos to the police, kudos to the security operatives for their quick response, and we hope more and more police units and security operatives would act in this manner when they get this kind of calls.
Thank you so much for that.
Thank you, Ade. We'll go on to our next story, Mr. C. Federal government loses bid to stop doctor strike. The federal government yesterday lost the bid to the strike action embarked by resident doctor. The strike, by the way, is now in its 2nd week, and the National Industrial Court sitting in Abuja adjourned the suit filed by the federal government against the striking doctors till September 15. Also very important is the statement made by the president of the NARD, and that is Professor Dr. Uyilawa Okwayesi, who said that he was deeply saddened, but I think a statement that drew my attention: we are not aware of the sufferings you all are going through due to government's insincerity of purpose. So they didn't say due to the doctor strike, but it's down to the government. But please take us to the story.
Okay, thank you very much. On Friday, the Federal Ministry of Labor, on behalf of the federal government, rushed to the National Industrial Court Abuja, ostensibly with the motion ex parte, to obtain an injunction restraining the National Association of Resident Doctors from continuing with the industrial strike. However, the court, in a considered ruling, said no. It would extend time, and it would invite the National Association of Resident Doctors to come before it and explain why the no work, no pay policy should not be implemented against the association and its members. Now, this is good. Now, let's not forget, their protests are not conjured out of thin air. Their allowances, they've not been paid. There's a salary structure, game fist, that they're on that has all sorts of inherent issues with it, and salaries are delayed for periods ranging between 3 to 7 months. And they're saying, look, we need to resolve all these issues. Doctors have been working, turning up every day for work. They're not getting paid. And now, it's interesting, he makes a statement. It's been 5 years and 11 months since we signed the memorandum of terms of settlement, which the government has failed to honor. Is there a reason why the government has not honored the memorandum of terms it voluntarily signed? 2, it's 120 days since we heeded your call to call of industrial action. For how long will we continue to pay lip service to the health sector? Recently, 3 chieftains of the APC flew abroad for medical attention. What does
In fact, they now have meetings and meetups.
but it's very sad that a president who's been in office for 6 years will travel to the UK for what is termed a routine checkup with his doctors.
So let me tell you why these things happen. Before we forget that the president is human as well. The human body is fallible, right? So while it takes days or months to build, indulge me, to build a physical structure, the body can fail in a few hours. So while the work is going on,
Val.
progressive.
Val, please don't go in that
Valentine.
I'm
direction.
sorry.
Valentine.
We're not going
Valentine,
to indulge on this one.
just one last point so that we can go. In 1984, this same man said that our hospitals have been turned into mere clinics.
He still said it in this.
Yes, and he said it again.
But guess what?
But-
he's one man.
Yeah, but
There are
what
people
has
around him.
and so why are they not paying the
But he's the
doctors?
chief executive.
Valentine. The
Valentine, please, let's not go there.
He's
Let's
chief executive.
let's not give excuses for you.
We're out of time.
Okay,
Yes, we are out of time.
But
We're
let's
going to
not go there
continue
at all,
this
please.
conversation during
No,
Lagos.
I'm just going to put this
No
in.
more
The
buck,
buck
please.
stops on his
Stable.
table.
All right.
Easy life
Thank
here.
you all
Yeah.
so very much. Valentine, this is going to be a good conversation at Lagos, so during Lagos Talks
Yes.
91. So do join us,
I'm ready.
8:10. If you do think that there's too much responsibility on the president, there's only
goodness.
one man.
Be a president one day and see how.
Who asked you to run? Anyways, let's keep this to Lagos Talks 91. This is Smooth 98.1. Thank you, Mr. C. Thank you, Ade. And Valentine, me and you are in it for Lagos Talks 91. Let's go.
Don't even start that. But he gives you
President, governor, local government chairman.
and I agree with you. I agree with you.
Prison.
Okay, wait. But let me ask you a question. Afghanistan, who are they blaming?
Who even employed Minister of Health? If your Minister of Health is not working, sack him and put someone
Afghanistan,
else.
they're blaming the US.
No,
No,
the
no,
buck
no,
stops on Biden's table.
I lie. It doesn't
If they are calling for Biden,
It's Biden, the
they are
president
calling
of
for Biden's
Afghanistan.
resignation. Guess what? Biden was not even president when America invaded
It was Bush.
Afghanistan.
It was
yes,
Bush, yes.
But they are calling for his own resignation.
Because government is a
Uneasy-
continuum. Why you put
Exactly. Uneasy lies the way that wears the crown. Do not.
Valentine, he has
election.
advisors. They advised him. He agreed. And he signed that they should remove everybody.
Or you resign. If the pressure is too
Advisors will
much.
give you
If the
informed
pre-
advice,
Uh-huh.
right? It's not the book doesn't entirely.
Who makes that
He does
decision?
so
You
bad.
make decisions, right? You make decisions. It's now left for your people to implement it. If they are not implementing it, they'll still blame you. That's true. I understand that. But I'm saying that he has a role to play. The other people around him have a role to play. But it's so easy for those others to hide under his shadow. To say, oh, the president.
But let me
everybody
explain
blame
the
We
scenario
do
you
our
just
work.
said. Let me just explain the scenario you just said. Right? You are the head of your home as the father.
Yes.
And then things are not working in the home because your staff are messing.
All eyes will look at me now.
Exactly.
Yeah,
You
I
say
know.
that the responsibility is too much.
I won't,
Shebi, you
I won't,
get
I won't
instructed to
pass the
clean
bulk
up.
of responsibility to another
What I'm saying
person.
is that
But I'm
people
saying
will
that
just blame.
everybody will be held to
Of
account
course.
by
no,
me.
yes, by you.
Yes.
So we, the people outside, will look to you. Then you yourself will now look at
Valentine,
your
I agree
internal
that there's a
business.
health
Exactly.
minister.
That's so all of us will
If
be
your
talking about president's
if
minister.
your people
But
are
I'm
not
still
performing,
saying that if you have, for instance, if you have House of Assembly members, you have representatives, you're not asking them questions, and then the president that just managed to wake up in the morning, managed to wake up in the morning, and he had sent a circular yesterday to a minister to act on, and the minister is still snoozing and hasn't worked. You still blame the president.
fire the minister.
Yeah, that's
Immediately, the
Val,
body language is not
Val,
even saying that he wants to do anything.
You issue a directive to your subordinates.
Yes.
And he doesn't do
And then
anything.
he's supposed to carry it out immediately.
He doesn't act one, doesn't act second, doesn't. I'll fire him now.
Why will you fire him?
Because I'll give you like 3 chances. If you,
But you after
I'll
the first
give you
one,
metrics
you
of
the
success.
first one
You
you
have-
warn him with mouth. Abi?
Yes.
Second one you
I'll
write
give
it.
you yes.
And then the
I'll
third
give you
one.
we are gone. It's as simple as that.
So I don't understand.
So who has Buhari sacked?
Well,
he's
Even
Yeah,
service
sacked a few
chiefs,
people,
he
actually.
refused. Who has
not
Buhari
service chief.
sacked?
It's not all
Buhari has not
military
sacked
guys.
anybody. Bye.
All right, thank you, YouTube. Thank you for watching.